Hi, this is Dave. This is the beginning of a new podcast, which I think I'm going to call Dave Talks Comics and Cartoons. I was thinking of calling it, I don't have time for this because I really feel as if I don't, but I really want to do it. But that's not a very good title for a podcast about comics and cartoons. So my plan is to talk about the comics and cartoons I've been reading in the past week. This first episode might cover the whole month of June, so it might be a little longer. But after that, I think I'm going to try and do this weekly, probably on the weekends, and it's probably going to be pretty rough, so I don't think I'm going to do much in the way of editing. So hopefully I can get it out by, say, Sunday night, Monday morning. Well, probably Sunday night. So my name is Dave. I'm variously known as Dave Levine, and I sometimes post as that. Other times I post as Kilmarrock. And I've been reading comic books for close to 40 years, since I was 5 or so, although not consistently, off and on. And these days I read a lot of older stuff. I really don't try to keep up with any of the new stuff. Occasionally I'll read some of it, but usually it's the more independent stuff if it's anything. Like I'm working my way through Scalped, although I'm not reading any of it at the moment. But I've read the first 5 books. So that's about as close as I get to being current on anything. Most of the other stuff I read are back issues or trades. And I'll also be talking about cartoons that I watch, like currently Batman Beyond and Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends. And there's other stuff I have planned to watch, but I haven't started watching yet. So that's about it for now. I'll probably attach this to something else which includes some chatter about what I've been reading and what I thought of it. Okay, so I'm going to start with one of my all-time favorite series, All-Star Squadron. I recently reread, this is a series from the early 80s, early to mid-80s. Don't remember exactly when it started, but my guess is 81. And it ran for about 67 issues, and there was 3 annuals. And so far this month, I just read the first annual. And it is a team-up of Green Lantern, Wonder Woman, and the Flash, Atom, Wildcat, and Guardian. And these are all Earth 2 heroes. So this is all pre-Crisis on Infinite Earths. And so this story is, well, I'm not going to go into all the details, but what's interesting about it, to me, is that Green Lantern, Wonder Woman, and the Flash were all featured on the covers of Comics Cavalcade, which was a series. And I don't think they had crossover stories on the inside, but they would always, at least for like the first 20 or 25 issues, they would always feature them. And doing something together, riding a bicycle, racing, some sort of a picture featuring all 3 of them doing something together. And on the old Comics Cavalcade. And they use one of those images kind of inside at the beginning of the story to show that they're hanging out together. But the bulk of the story has to do with really something that ties back into the Atom, Wildcat, and the Guardian's pasts. And I guess this is kind of spoilery, but kind of what it turns out is that all 3 of them, because none of them really have any superpowers. The Atom, I think, later gets some superpowers, and this is not Ray Palmer Atom. This is Al Pratt Atom. But I think he gets some superpowers later on, although I never really read any of those stories. And so all of them were trained by the same guy, it turns out. And there's some alien force, and this also ties back into an old issue of Green Lantern. I'd have to pull out the issue. Let's see. I have it nearby. That old issue. Let's see. I'm pulling out All-Star Squadron Annual number 1. And it looks like it all ties back into something that happened in Green Lantern. This is the original, the Silver Age Green Lantern series, Hal Jordan. Green Lantern number 112. And it kind of, I guess, goes to explain something, but it's more of a, almost like an Easter egg, because it kind of explains something minor, I think, or explains the tie-in and where it originally came from. Although I don't think I've read Green Lantern 112. I may have. I might even have that issue. Anyway, I reread this issue basically just because of the first page, which, once again, is an image of Green Lantern, Wonder Woman, and the Flash, and that's Jay Garrick and Alan Scott. Not these are the Earth 2 versions of those 3 characters, riding a bicycle over on a on a high wire at a circus, which was also, I believe, the cover of Comic Cavalcade number 2. Anyway, so I reread the story, and it's pretty good, and I really like the Jerry Ordway inks on this over Adrian Gonzalez. And of course, it was written by Roy Thomas, who wrote all of the stories. All of All-Star Squadron. I believe he edited it for the most part too. And there's some great notes in it. Well, actually there aren't any notes, are there? No, there's not, but there are some fact file sheets which give you more details on Wonder Woman of Earth 2, The Flash of Earth 2, Green Lantern of Earth 2, and The Guardian. And so that I read that. Let's see, what else? Oh, I finished off the Ambush Bug miniseries, which was written and drawn by Keith Giffen. And I never read this before. It's also from the early 80s, 83, 84, somewhere around there. And I wasn't too crazy about it. I mean, I like Keith Giffen's art, and I like the lettering by John Costanza. And he also lettered a lot of All-Star Squadron, including All-Star Squadron Annual number 1, which I just spoke about. But I wasn't too crazy about this series. It was a little too out there for me. I guess I like something with a little more consistency to it. Coherence. I'm not sure which is the right word. But there's a few stories in there. I mean, it's almost like an anthology. Or just a collection of gags. And not really what I want in a comic book, I guess. Or I wasn't ready for it. And so I wasn't crazy about it. It wasn't awful. Artwork was decent. So that's that. Let's see. Now I'm going to skip ahead to Captain America and the Falcon. I finished off the 3rd collection of Jack Kirby's run on the series, which is The Swine. I haven't read the first 2, but I really wanted to read this one because it features Arnim Zola. And I really dug this. I mean, for the most part. That there's 2 annuals at the end, Annual 3 and Annual 4. I wasn't as crazy about those, but I really like the stories that involved the Falcon and Arnim Zola and Cap and Sharon Carter and the Red Skull. And there's some really, I mean, it's not great, deep stuff, but it's Kirby, and it's the kind of Kirby that I really like, and the way he draws. That era is what I think of, because it was what I was when I first saw Kirby stuff, it was from that era, so I really enjoyed that. Okay, next up we have the Falcon Limited Series from Marvel. This is from 1983, late 83, early 84, November of 83 through February of 84, just 4 issues. And I had bought number 2 in this series back in the day and read it, and primarily because it shows a picture of the Falcon being held up by a sentinel, and I was very into X-Men stuff back then. And I don't remember seeing any of the other issues in this series at that time. But I enjoyed it, and so I finally decided to go back and get the other issues, and I did. I don't remember if it was at a convention or through Comic Collectors Live or where it was. But anyway, I got the rest of the series, and so I finally got around to reading it. And it's pretty good. It's pretty good. It's, it's written by, the credit says Jim Owsley, but he now goes as Christopher Priest. I guess he changed his name to Christopher Priest. I'm not sure. I think Jim Owsley was his original name. But, and let's see, it's drawn by, there's a couple of pencilers, I think, on this. The first issue is Paul Smith with inks by Vince Colletta, but I think after that it goes to Mark Bright. Let's see, issue 2 is Mark Bright. Issue 3, if I can find the credits. I'm not seeing the credits. Must be a ways into this issue. This is great podcasting. Podcasting at its best. Anyway, first couple issues, the first issue there's no real villain or no real supervillain in it. There is kind of, but it's nobody well known or established. And in the second issue, he has to deal with a Sentinel, and in the third and fourth issues, Electro shows up, the Spider-Man villain. And towards the end of the series, Captain America also shows up. And I don't think any of that's a spoiler because it shows some of that on one or the other of the covers. But, it's dealing with the Falcon, and he's living in New York City and dealing with the community because he's a community worker. And I think at the end of the series he decides to run for Congress, or maybe it's just for city council or something. But anyway, for the most part, the series is about the Falcon trying to deal with stuff. There's this gang he has to deal with, and neighborhood type stuff for the most part, with some supervillains thrown in, and Ronald Reagan's in there at one point as president, and kind of strange, a little far fetched for my taste, but I enjoyed the series. It was decent, I don't expect the comic books of that day to be outstanding. There's a few awesome comics from that day. I won't think I would call this awesome, but I enjoyed it. And I thought the art was decent. What else struck me about this series? Falcon has a kind of a sidekick. There's a police officer named Turk, who, I think that's his name, who hangs out kind of Torque, not Turk, Torque, who hangs out with the Falcon, although not always. It's kind of they keep running into one another, and but he's a shotgun-toting cop, undercover, plainclothes policeman in New York City, which I find kind of amusing. I'm not certain how realistic that is, but it's a good series. It was a fun read, and I should really find something more substantial to say about this. I think that's about it. Okay, finally, as far as comics go, we have something that's not Marvel or DC. This is a Belgian comic. This is Tintin and the Black Island, or is it just the Black Island under the banner of the Adventures of Tintin? I read this first when I was much, much younger, probably, I don't know, 6, 7, 8, something like that. And this is one of the earlier Tintin books, Tintin stories. This edition that I bought is printed by Little Brown, which I believe is the company that's been printing Tintin for quite some time, at least since the 70s in the United States. But it's a little different from the big hardback editions I remember. It's got extra notes in it. It's got pictures in the front of the cast of characters, Tintin, Snowy, Thompson and Thompson, and then some of the bad guys and suspicious characters like the old Scotsman. So the story begins the way a lot of Tintin stories begin, which is that Tintin kind of stumbles across something. Usually somebody doing something illegal, and they try to bump him off, and that just spurs him on because Tintin is a reporter. And so I guess he's got that a questioning nature. And so when he runs across something that seems suspicious, he wants to know more about it. That's my take. And as well, you've got Thompson and Thompson, the Scotland Yard inspectors, who are kind of like Laurel and Hardy, except for they're twins. They look exactly the same. And they're always stumbling and bumbling. And, of course, you've got your evil villains who are always trying to bump off Tintin. And you've got Snowy, his dog. So this starts, I believe, in France. Yes, this starts in France, or maybe Belgium. I think it's a little unclear on that point. But of course he ends up in Scotland. He ends up catching the ferry across the English Channel, or is it the North Sea there? I'm not sure. And he winds up, actually I think it's across the English Channel, and then he flies up to Scotland, and eventually he winds up on the Black Island. And there's a lot of things I enjoy about this book. I mean, these cartoons, I read Tintin. Tintin was probably one of the earliest comics that I read consistently. So these images bring back a lot of memories. Just the way Hergé, the writer-artist of Tintin, draws, and the facial expressions, the little things he does, the way he portrays fights, the way he portrays other kinds of action, the way that Snowy gets involved in the story. It just brings back a lot of memories. And I think it's very good. And it's actually interesting to look at it now, because what I didn't realize then was that a lot of this was done. I don't think they say it here in this book, but a lot of this was done, if I'm correct, it was done as a comic strip for as a daily comic strip, I think. I'm not sure. But so if you read like the panels going across, the 2 or 3 panels going across, there's normally a nice little progression there. Boom, 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 boom. And sometimes some of these do seem more like a Sunday panel where you've got maybe 2 rows of panels. But for the most part, it's 4 rows on each page. And it could be anywhere from just a single panel to maybe 5 panels going across on a page. And a lot of it is visual gags. Well, there's not a lot of visual gags, but there's a lot of visual storytelling. And I really like that. I really like that. So basically the story is that Tintin is chasing these, trying to figure out what's going on, this Dr. Muller. And people have tried to kill him a couple times, Dr. Muller and his associates. And eventually he tracks them down to the Black Island. And that's the story. And there's a giant ape in it, and I think you get a picture of that on the back cover. So it's a little strange that you find a giant ape in Scotland. I don't know, at least that's my take. But anyway, I enjoyed it quite a bit once again. Also, the book also has a lot of extras in the back, which I had never seen before in the previous editions that I had read. They include a lot of notes both on the creation of the book and about how there was 3 different versions of the book, and how Hergé went back and updated the book a few decades after it was first published. And he updated some of the things, like some of the trains. He changed the trains so they looked more modern. Of course, by today's standards, they looked old-fashioned. But they don't look as old-fashioned as they, certainly in the 60s, when he updated the book, it would have looked considerably more up to date, considerably more, up to date than it previously had. It also goes into a little bit of the background of what his inspirations were for some of the characters, for the castle on the Black Islands, for some of the rooms, the architecture, and they actually show you comparisons of photographs to Hergé's drawings, and it's very interesting. Anyway, this has me interested in reading more because this is the first time I've read Tintin in quite some time. Probably over a decade, maybe more than 2. And when I was a kid, I read almost all of the Tintin books, first in French and then later in English, although I'm not sure which I read first, but some of them I'm sure I read in French first, and I used to have some of them in French. This is the only one that I have, and I just picked it up recently at a comic book shop. But I think it's a great read, and if you like cartooning, and I think it's worth a try. It was only $8.99, and that's what I assume most of these are going for. And these aren't the big full-size editions like they used to print. These are a little smaller. They're a little smaller than a standard comic book. I guess about 4x8 or something like that. Anyway, I really recommend it. I think it's a good read, and if you enjoyed Tintin and you haven't read this, then you really should. Okay, time to talk cartoons. First off, I've been watching Adventure Time. I know Adventure Time's been on the air for something like 5 seasons already, but I only just started it because they've added it to Netflix recently, and that's where I get most of my television from, because I don't have TV. So, I'm like 3/4 of the way at this point through the Adventure Time season. It's been a week or so since I watched any episodes. The only episodes I watched in June were Henchmen. Oh wait, that was the one with Celine. Is it Marceline, the Vampire Queen? Something like that. Anyway, that was a good one. And then there was Dungeon, which is the one where I think Flynn tries to go into the dungeon by himself without the help of Finn and the dog, whose name is escaping my mind right now. Anyway, I thought that one was really good too. And then there was the Duke, which was, that was okay. The one with the Duke of Nuts and, what was it, Princess Bubblegum was angry at him because he'd eaten her pudding or something like that. Anyway, good episode, but didn't compare to the previous 2. So I should really get back to that because I do like Adventure Time. Then there's Batman Beyond, and I've watched 3 episodes of Batman Beyond this month also. First there was Plague, which had something to do with a virus, I guess. I don't remember exactly that. So I'm in the middle, I'm towards the end of the 2nd season of Batman Beyond. Then there was April Moon, which I really liked because it had it had a kind of a noir feel to it, and it had a real jazzy, but a soft jazz kind of soundtrack. And it was just so different from your average Batman Beyond episode. I think I liked it just because it was different. And the noir feel to it because I like that kind of television and book genre. And so I liked April Moon. It wasn't perfect, but I liked it. And then finally, Centuries of the Last Cosmos, which was just so many references to George Lucas and Star Wars, and I enjoyed it for that reason. And I don't know, I thought it was a pretty good episode with another kid from Terry's high school who gets sucked into this. Well, he doesn't get literally sucked into this game, but because he gets a high score in this game, he gets called up by the creator of this game, who wants him to commit crimes for him, and it all has to do with, and it's actually something that's still kind of topical, which it has to do with people's legal battles over ownership of intellectual property, and so that angle, the whole thing I thought was kind of fun. Not great episode, but I thought it was fun. And then finally, the only other cartoon I've been watching this month has been Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends. And I just love this show. It's so off the wall. I watched it when it was airing on Cartoon Network originally. And since they've added it to Netflix, I started to watch it. Unfortunately, they only have the first season. Maybe that'll change sometime soon. But I watched Worldwide Wabbit, which is the one where Blue and the boy, Matt, is that his name? I can't remember now. Where they tape Mr. Oh, who's the big rabbit? Everything's just going. They tape him doing something silly, and then they put it on the internet, and then it goes viral. And so it's kind of, I think it's still very, I mean, it still carries forward very well, even though this episode's probably 10 years old. And then the other episode I watched was Very Scary, which is this new imaginary friend comes to the home and very quickly develops a crush on Blue, who doesn't even really pay attention to her and just keeps calling her by the wrong name. But it was okay. I don't know if I enjoyed it as much as Worldwide Wabbit, but it was pretty good. And that's about it for cartoons. So I'll continue to watch those. I'm going to continue to work my way through those. I'm winding down on all three of them. I'm going to give Batman Beyond a break once I get to the end of season 2, and I think I have 3 more episodes in that, and about 5 more of Adventure Time, and about 4 more of Foster's. So other cartoons I want to watch coming up, I want to get back to Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes, because I've only watched season 1. And I want to get back to Avatar, because I've only watched season 1 of that. And there's probably some others, but I can't think of them right now. So that's it for this episode. Hopefully I will record another one soon, like next weekend. Today is Saturday, June 22nd. And so hopefully I'll get this one out before tomorrow night, and I'll get another one out next week. Okay. If you have any feedback, leave it on the blog, because for now that's where I plan on posting this. The blog is at readingforthetrade.blogspot.com. If you found it there, or I'm probably going to post a link to it on my Facebook page also, so you could leave a comment there also if you want to. Any words of encouragement or feedback would be appreciated. And take care, and hopefully I'll talk to you next week.